This is with Thomas Delauer, and they're talking about cod liver oil, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Fish oil as a whole.
And is this on Derek's moreplatesmoredates.com?
Yeah, I think so.
Really? Because usually he has the wooden backgrounds, like with the old speaker system in the back.
I think it's posted on his YouTube, but maybe he was like at Thomas Delauer's place. I don't know.
Hey guys, we are here with Thomas Delauer, one of the premier health and fitness diet, just overarching broad spectrum, high quality health content that I've seen on the internet to date. And thanks for being here, dude.
So awkward.
Yeah. So today I wanted to talk about omega-3s because this is a very nuanced discussion as far as how do you even know if what you're getting is going to help you or hurt you. Should you be having it? Should you not be having it? Is it as impactful on cardiovascular health as we've been led to believe, or is it, always rancid and you're going to screw yourself up if you use it? So I've seen some of your content and it does get very, very nuanced. And there's even people out there who say that you shouldn't even have omega-3s at all because they're problematic. And there's the omega-6 to 3 ratio and all this stuff. But I guess.
Okay, what do you guys think?
Well, so he's obviously introducing it here. The one thing I wanted to mention, there are very, very few people who are saying you shouldn't have omega-3s at all. I think we are some of the few, like the repeat crowd. And I'm pretty sure this was a result of me being on the Power Project podcast, because there's like they're both of those guys are in that kind of network and have been on there and everything. And Thomas Delauer will mention me later, but I just wanted to set that stage that I think there's a lot of things that are starting to gain traction from the bioenergetic sphere, like having more carbs, being concerned about omega-6s, right? That's taken on as like the seed oils, and people are starting to get on board with that. I think the low carb and fasting, like I do think that is starting to shift.
Shifting, yeah.
Yeah, and the omega-3s I think hasn't yet, but that's like one of the main next ones that I think may or will. And so I think we're just like starting to see that permeate a little bit.
Now I know why you
been planted.
Chose this clip, Jay. I'm just joking. Okay, so get to this second one.
But for me, I take cod liver oil because it's got a good ratio of vitamin D3 to vitamin A, and then just the right amount of reesterified triglyceride form omega-3. And what that means is, like with that, it's usually a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio of DHA to EPA, which you're not going to find in the typical fish oil. What I mean by that is, like if you go into a Costco, you're probably not going to find one that has a higher ratio of DHA to EPA. But ones you do want to look for that are going to get you closest to that are going to be cod liver oil, but it's going to be a lower quantity overall. So it's a good ratio, but the quantity of omega-3s is lower in cod liver, so you'd have to take more of it. But it's in what is called an reesterified triglyceride. So if you look at a label of a fish oil pill, you're going to see that it's usually in ethyl ester form. So it'll say it somewhere on the label. It'll be like in ethyl ester or ethyl esterified, right? That goes rancid. That is what goes rancid. When it's in a stable triglyceride form, the fish oil is much more protected. It's much more like getting it from the real fish versus a suspended polyunsaturated fat. So those are kind of like the high marks you want to look for. You want to be looking for, higher DHA content. You want to be looking for it to not have the words ethyl ester if possible. Okay. And then you also want to, kind of look at, what's the location? What's the region?
Isn't that a completely moot point because it's going into a 98.6 degree body that's just going to oxidize no matter what?
And stomach acid and bile acids, which will break apart the omega-3s and then to emulsify them and then bring them in the enterocyte, and then they'll reform in triglyceride after.
Right. So they don't stay in triglyceride form is what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe it gets less rancid before then, but then after then, yeah.
So the goal, that's, I was going to say, just to point out something good about cod liver oil is we're under the impression that most people are like vitamin A or D deficient. So when somebody has a positive effect of taking cod liver oil, we're not negating that they could be deficient in vitamin D or A. And also the EPA can interfere with the production of eicosanoids, like Mike said, and the prostaglandins, and that could have an anti-inflammatory effect. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Omega-3s, people can get benefits from those too, short term, but it doesn't mean long term. It's a good idea. And so, Mike, you brought up a good point. This is going to matter potentially for the product on the shelf if it's in triglyceride versus ethyl ester form. And they kind of mentioned that, I think, in the next clip. where he does, acknowledge that most of the products on the shelf are already oxidized. And so he's saying avoid those. And that's important, right? Like there are studies showing that huge portions of the ones on the shelf are already oxidized. That's not a good idea. However, what we'll get to is that it doesn't matter if you're consuming one that's not oxidized, because even just digestion alone will cause peroxidation. And then definitely once it's used, internally, you're going to have even more. And that's what we see in the research. And it doesn't matter, even if it is cod liver oil, even if it's stable, even if it's pharmaceutical grade, and it's not oxidized in the bottle, it does not mean that it's safe or healthy to consume. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be peroxidized once you consume it.
I think that there's a...
No, are you going to play the next clip? No.
Oh, I was good. The other thing I think that people talk about, because like a knee-jerk reaction from the hormesis crowd or from the fish oil crowd is going to be like, well, there's all these studies that show antioxidant effects of fish oil. And it's like, it is causing antioxidation by inducing lipid peroxidation and upregulating a defense response. So like, you're going to get lipid peroxide products from fish oil. Like it's going to happen. The question is just going to be how capable is your body of mounting a defensive response to the lipid peroxidation that is induced by the fish oil. That the actual products that people consider beneficial from fish oil, like the resolvins and these types of things, are peroxidized portions of the fatty acids. So it's like that's what you're shooting for, is some of the lipid peroxidation stuff. The eicosanoids and signaling molecules are peroxidized polyunsaturated fatty acids. The enzymes peroxidize them, and then that gives them their effect. So like you're asking for lipid peroxidation products no matter which way you go in the process. And yeah, so that's why like this argument around like this form and that form, and this form is less peroxidized and this one's more and this and that, it's like, it's all going to be peroxidized. Like we're going to all get to the party somehow. Some people are walking, some people are taking a bike, some people are flying, but we're all getting there.
You forgot to mention the most important part, that you can make a lot of money selling cod liver oil. So that's really what I think this is. Not necessarily for Delauer, but for...
You need the fermented cod liver oil, Danny, because that stuff is special.
Like $80 per bottle.
When I found the Weston A. Price stuff, my mom was doing that. And she actually was buying the butter oil for the Activate Factor X vitamin K and then the cod liver stuff. And she had me take the cod liver. I remember the first time I took it, I literally vomited it up. I could not. And I was burped up fish oil. And so I took it like 3 times, two or three times, like, Mom, I cannot take this. This is disgusting. Like, I don't even care how good it is for me. I cannot swallow it. Like, I want to gag every single time. So that was my indication personally that without any research, without any thought processes, that the stuff was gross. And even when I was working on a brain injury unit, they were giving brain injured patients pharmaceutical grade fish oil or EPA or DHEA to help improve their brain function. I remember every time I opened the capsules, sometimes I would have to cut open the capsules to squeeze them into the cups because I had to feed people through stomach tubes. And it was absolutely disgusting to smell, like just terrible smell. And for me, before doing any research for the fish oil stuff, I was like, man, even if this was good for me, like who wants to eat this? This is really bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, how awful. I mean, it's not that it matters too much, like it's going to peroxidize if someone's healthy, but if they're in a state like that and already dealing with massive amounts of lipid peroxidation and oxidative or reductive stress going on, to then add fish oil to that kind of system, I mean, that's awful.
Awfully good.
But stuff that, I mean, the medical system stuff, the tube feeding that we were giving them is, some of them is, there's different tube feedings, but the general base for tube feedings is maltodextrin, fructooligosaccharides, some types of synthetic vitamins, and then soybean oil plus they have like a high omega-3 one that has like the different algae oils that they use. It's like and then the protein in there's like vital wheat protein and then like purified casein isolate. So it's like, or vital wheat gluten, things like that. So, I mean, the fish oil is the least of the problems in that circumstance. The entire situation is just an absolute nightmare because the other thing is the caloric intake for those people is also extremely low. A lot of they're measured with dietitians through formulas, like through calculations of estimated energy and expenditure. But with the inactivity plus, it's usually like an 1800 calorie or 1600 calorie formula or something that people tend to waste away as well. That whole circumstance is pretty bad inside the hospital with formula feeding and medications and whatnot. So, plus you get your SSRIs and whatever else.
So here's the last clip of Delauer talking about cod liver oil.
But everybody's different. Everybody, like someone that's going to have a higher degree of inflammation might be better off with a higher dose of it. But if it's rancid, I mean, then you're doing yourself more harm. And there's guys like Jay Feldman that are kind of talking about that now, where it's saying, okay, if you have a rancid fish oil or a rancid omega-6 or a rancid polyunsaturated fat in the first place, that's going to be more detrimental than any potential benefit you get from it.
So do you think that most of the fish oil supplements that are available are more harmful than helpful?
It's a good question.
Like, for example, if I go to Costco, they have their Kirkland brand or some of these other at scale, like probably they at least write on the label, like very, very regulated and what kind of standards they're adhering to, et cetera. But in general, I don't know, how would you?
Yeah, I'd say if you walk into the average store, I don't necessarily want to put Costco on the spot, but if you walk into the standard store, most of them are probably doing more harm than good.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's not to say that a good omega-3 doesn't do you good, right? Yeah. And I don't want to get on my high horse and just tout cod liver oil, but I just think that cod liver oil is the most stable form.
That sounds really confusing to parse, given what he said. If you were taking him at face value, that seems pretty difficult for that person.
I think Jay already made the argument, right? It's his argument is that if you're in a higher inflammatory state, you need more fish oil, which say you had metabolic syndrome, right? Or obesity or something along those lines, you have higher ROS. So you were already going to generate more reactive oxygen species. And then what gets attacked by reactive oxygen species? Proteins, DNA, and lipids. And which lipids are most susceptible to reactive oxygen species stress? Polyunsaturated fatty acids. So even when you look in the disease processes, like coronary artery disease or metabolic syndrome or kidney disease, as you guys have said before, you see lipid peroxides and you see high amounts of ROS. You see energetic dysfunction with high amounts of ROS production, and then oxidized polyunsaturated fatty acids with distorted cellular structures. So if you are under inflammation, if you have metabolic problems, if you are running a really high fat, low carbohydrate diet and really pushing fatty acid oxidation, you will have higher ROS. So dumping really peroxidizable fatty acids, with omega-3s being the most peroxidizable, particularly long chain omega-3s, then you are much more likely to oxidize them in that contextual cellular environment. So it's it's a weird argument to make. It's to talk about that if you're taking a peroxidized omega-3, it's probably not going to be that, great for your health. But if you're sick and you have more ROS, you have more oxidative stress, well, then it's good to take it. And it's if you are making the argument that you're blocking cyclooxygenase and lipoxyoxygenase, the enzymes that will oxidize polyunsaturated fatty acids. So if you're going to take it to block those, and you're saying, you're going to block inflammation by blocking those enzymes with omega-3s, fine. Sure, you could make the argument there, but then it's why don't you just use aspirin? You don't have to deal with lipid peroxidation products. And you also are blocking the inflammatory mediator production. So it's you can go, plus there's downsides, obviously what we're getting at, to using highly peroxidizable fats to go about things in that type of way. There's other ways to do it. And then there's different studies looking at, basically, you can compare, there's some studies comparing high polyunsaturated fatty acids from omega-6, high polyunsaturated fatty acids from omega-3, and then low polyunsaturated fatty acids. Again, these aren't randomized controlled trials. These are animal studies, but in the animal studies, the low polyunsaturated fatty acid group tends to do pretty well compared to the other groups in terms of both inflammation and immunosuppression.
Got it. Okay, so let's move on to...
Well, I want to add a couple things in here. So first thing I'd like to say is we'd be happy to have Thomas on and talk about these things. He seems pretty open to changing his view or discussing these things. He's shifted his view as far as carb intake and fasting to some extent. And I think we're mostly in agreement on the fish oil situation too. We've got the first part, which is that we agree that if the fish oil is already oxidized, that is more harmful than helpful. And then it's just the recognition that regardless of whether it's oxidized before it comes in, it went by the time it's digested, and then also by the time it's used internally, it will then be oxidized. And so we are causing more harm than benefit. And we cited a number of these studies in a couple episodes on Energy Balance podcast. We talked about cod liver oil specifically as something, it was in episode 91. We talked about that specifically and cited studies specifically showing that the consumption of cod liver oil will still become, that will become oxidized in the intestines after digestion. And then also afterward, that part aside, just if it's consumed, you see higher levels of lipid peroxides. So I don't think it really matters of course it matters to some extent, but it doesn't matter so much what the quality is that you're consuming, because they're all going to really end up in pretty much the same situation. The other thing too, there's a lot when it comes to the fish oil. So we have a series that will probably be out by the time this is posted. It'll be episodes 105 through 108, where we dig into the whole fish oil lifespan and conversation, and why, even though there are some studies suggesting it may be beneficial, when you actually look deeper, there's a lot of evidence against that, and showing, again, increased lipid peroxides, increased incorporation of the membrane causing aging and mortality, and a number of different disease processes, and impairing mitochondrial function. So I would definitely reference those for the actual studies and mechanisms and things.
If you enjoyed that clip, you'll definitely want to download the free Energy Balance Food Guide. The Energy Balance Food Guide will help you determine exactly what to eat to optimally support your metabolism and help you lose weight, improve your digestion, get amazing sleep, boost your energy, and so much more. The Food Guide makes it extremely easy to get started with a bioenergetic approach to optimizing your health. So head over to jfeldmanwellness.com/guide to download your free Energy Balance Food Guide.